Welcome and good morning. I am Victoria McDonald, today's worship associate. Today is our fourth online service. Reverend Jackie, Drew White, Daniel Schwinn, and I are bringing this to you from the church sanctuary. Please bear with us if everything doesn't flow smoothly. We are continuing to learn new aspects of this process, and we are going through a difficult time successfully. So welcome to this morning, this day, and this opportunity to be together in our community online service. Our weekly announcements. First, we would like everyone to please sign in on the chat box to the right of your screen. This will let us know who is joining us. Please refrain from using the chat box unless absolutely needed for technical help until sorrows, concerns, and joys. It is very disturbing to others to see the chat box. We want to create a reverential service. Also, if you plan to be moving around during the service, please turn off your video. Again, it is very disturbing to others to see people moving around during the service. We will be having sorrows, concerns, and joys, but it will be after the sermon. We will first read those that came in early by email, then I will invite other sorrows, concerns, and joys to be posted to the chat box, and a candle will be lit for you. Before we get started, we need to mention that our church remains viable because of your contributions. And later in the service, we will have an offertory time. There are several ways you could contribute. On the screen, there is a photo of the website showing where you can make your offering. Click on the Give button in the upper right-hand corner between Search and Contact. When you click on this button, you can pay via PayPal. Unless noted as a pledge, all online donations made today will go to our April Change for Change recipient. Please be sure to note whether this is a plate donation or part of your pledge. Or, of course, you can send your pledge or other donation, as I do, by the mail. Thank you. Our April Change for Change goes to the Community Food Bank. The food bank was established in 1980 with local congregations joining to provide food assistance to needy families and individuals. It has been a much-needed service in our area, serving hundreds of families weekly. With this pandemic, the services are more critically needed in the Idaho Falls area. The Post-Register had a front-page article about the LDS Church trucking 42,000 pounds of food to our Idaho Falls food bank. What a gift! Yet it was noted that this amount of food will last approximately 2 weeks. There's 50 more weeks in a year. The food bank has created the means of turning $1 into a $5 benefit for families or individuals. This is a worthy nonprofit for our congregation. We now move into the sacred time of worship, and I will ring the peace bowl. As I do ring the peace bowl 3 times, take deep breaths, then relax with your out-breath. For this moment and this time, let go of your anxieties, your fears, and your worries. Be here now. We'll begin our service with our prelude, a song written by John Prine, who, as a young man, when making his rounds as a mailman, noticed that in many homes he saw older people sitting alone at the window, looking out, waiting to hear the words, "Hello in there."
Apartment in the city. Me and Loretta like living there. Well, it'd been years since the kids had grown a life of their own and left us alone. John and Linda live in Omaha, and Joe is somewhere on the road. We lost Davy in the Korean War, and I still don't know what for. Don't matter anymore. You know that old trees just grow stronger, and old rivers grow wilder every day. Old people just grow lonesome, waiting for someone to say hello in there. Me and Loretta, we don't talk much more. She sits and stares through the back door screen, and all the news just repeats itself like some forgotten dream that we've both seen. Someday I'll go and call up Rudy. We worked together at the factory. What could I say if he asked what's new? Nothing, what's with you? Nothing much to do. You know that old trees just grow stronger, and old rivers grow wilder every day. Old people just grow lonesome, waiting for someone to say hello in there. So if you're walking down the street sometime, spot some hollow ancient eyes, please don't just pass them by and stare as if you didn't care. Say hello in there.
Since we are not together, I will read our church covenant for all of us. You can recite it from home with me, if you choose. Love is the spirit of this community, and service its law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another. We have lit our chalice. If you have a candle or chalice available, please light yours with me. If you don't have one, please consider having one for the future so you can light a candle in your own home. Thank you. Reverently, I offer this symbol of our hope and high intent. Reverently, I bequeath this flame to all of you. This is the light that is lit for everyone who comes into the world and for everyone who leaves the world. Let its flame go from life to life till all is lit with its warmth. Let its flame illuminate the life of those who have passed away. Tell that the light means wisdom. Tell that the light means kindness. Tell that the light means understanding. Tell that the light means tolerance. Tell that the light means sacrifice. Tell that the light is a vision of a fairer world. Tell that this is the light that is lit for everyone who comes into the world and for everyone who leaves the world.
My call to worship this morning are words adapted from the Reverend Gretchen Haley. I've adapted them only slightly. Gretchen says, "In this weary world, we too often wake wondering what shattering of the heart today will bring in this world. Joy is an act of resistance and singing too. Hope is a stubborn practice, an insistent assertion that not everything can be undone. So let us now be determined to lift up our eyes to the beauty that remains even now. Let us come to lift our voices with brave boldness. Let us lean into one another and our breath with gratitude. Let us be result in our reunion, feeling ourselves still virtually here together, unwilling to forsake forgiveness, kindness, friendship, love, unwilling to concede my part or any part of ourselves or our world to anything other than grace and goodness. Look around. Look into our virtual beloved community and give thanks. Everything we need is available through this community. So come, let us virtually worship together. And now, as you are able and willing, we're going to be able to sing our opening hymn, Kindred, We Now Meet to Worship. The hymn was emailed, all the hymns, by the way, were emailed out prior to the service, and they are in a PDF file. The hymn has been pre-recorded by our lovely Jessica Coopers, who will sing and play it on the screen for you, and you're invited to join along singing with her. Please note that, as in other services in the past, she will play the hymn through one time so you can become familiar with the hymn melody, and then she'll join in singing, and you can sing along with her too.
weakness, loss, and overwhelm. Let's encourage one another, hands not joined but hearts are held. Friends, be gentle with each other, there's so much we're going through. May this be a time for healing, holding space for grieving too. Bodies, minds, and hearts are weary, anguish fills the aching soul, but we know with perseverance broken hearts can be made whole.
Of all the many religious dates we share with our Christian, Jewish, and Muslim neighbors throughout the year, it is without doubt this one, Easter Sunday. It's without a doubt that Easter Sunday is the one that gives Unitarian Universalists the most theological and spiritual pause. You know, we have no trouble noting and celebrating the ancient pre-Christian nature center meanings of this day. Since the earliest days of recorded history, men and women and children from all corners of the earth have rejoiced with poetry and song for the coming of spring. We Unitarian Universalists have absolutely no trouble singing at the top of our lungs the cheerful hymns about the resurrection of spring, like the one, "Lo, the earth awakes again." For we, like the rest of humanity, feel our primordial hearts soar as spring bursts forth in its rapturous chorus of green and gladsome things. What a glorious time of year it is. But when it comes to the complicated Christian narrative and the accompanying theological assertions of Easter Christmas, we gulp a bit and don't quite know how to relate religiously. It's not that we are dismissive or disdainful of the traditional Christian message. Our faith has always shown respect for the various beliefs of others, but more that ourselves, we Unitarians find ourselves in a very different theological and spiritual place. For most, on this Sunday, we find ourselves in the awkward spiritual position that, as one colleague described when he said that on Christmas Sunday, the Unitarian Universalists who filled our churches all across the country, they come all dressed up, but have nowhere to theologically go. Now, as good as that is as a UU one-liner, it is in fact far from true. We Unitarian Universalists actually have lots of significant places to go theologically and spiritually on Easter Sunday. But for most of us, those places are far different from those of our Presbyterian, Methodist, Catholic, and other Christian neighbors. As you all know, this morning, in a couple of 100,000 Christian churches all across this country, millions of people are being told through virtual services the Christian promise of Easter. And for most Christian sects, the Christian promise of Easter is simply that Jesus was crucified on Good Friday and buried in a tomb. But the rock got rolled away, and 3 days later, Jesus was miraculously resurrected from death into the eternal life. And because of his divinity and sacrifice, our human sins are forgiven. And we too, if we accept him as our Savior, can have eternal life. Again, without dismissing or being disrespectful, it must be said that for most, if not all, all of us Unitarian Universalists, this is not a theological or spiritual place to which we either can or want to go. We are respectfully glad that this Easter promise brings peace and hope to so many of our Christian neighbors and friends, but it is not a message that meets our spiritual needs on this Sunday. But none of this means, and please hear me loudly and clear, good religious people, none of this means that we cannot on this Easter Sunday look beyond the confines of the Christian narrative and find genuine meaning for ourselves, meaning in the broader sense, deeper spiritual themes which lie quietly and powerfully there for us. While I, and most, if not all of us, do not find the classic Christian Easter assertion of the actual resurrection of Jesus a useful one in our own spiritual life. I do believe that resurrection, in a broader human sense of something which is possible for all of us as we live our lives, is an extremely important spiritual concept for me to both understand and claim deep in my heart, and I suggest for you too. I want to suggest to you this chilly Easter morning a spiritual understanding of resurrection that can be both useful and helpful to us as Unitarian Universalists. I'm going to describe this using the metaphor of the Easter story. There is no question in my mind that for all of us, particularly now as we are living in the uncertainties brought about by the COVID-19 pandemic, that Good Friday is true. Many are the crucifixions of the body and spirit that we must face over our lifetime, and particularly now, the inevitable limitations and losses that come our way because of the COVID pandemic. Also, the tragedies and failures, sufferings and sorrows that we as human beings routinely experience beside the COVID epidemic or pandemic. All of our lives long, we must confront challenging circumstances beyond our control. Illnesses, accidents, disabilities, the loss of persons and relationships precious to us, painful and unwelcome events in our lives that mute our hearts and darken our days. And now, this invisible enemy, the COVID virus, too. None of us go through life without having our share of painful Good Fridays. But the good news, good people, is that Easter is also true. Easter, at least for us as Unitarian Universalists, is not so much a specific date in the calendar. Rather, Easter is a matter of the human spirit for us. It is a matter of human beings finding and affirming life and purpose in the face of death itself. Easter dawns, indeed it dawns at any time our lives, regardless of our seasons, happens. It happens when we decide as a matter of heart to practice resurrection, to spiritually push back against all those inevitable realities in our lives that seek to diminish and distance us from our full and purposeful humanity. Easter happens when we refuse, in the face of life's losses or difficulties, to submit to what I call our human agency, the possibilities and the purposes of our personhood, no matter how great the threat or the loss is. To use another image, Easter happens whenever we find the spiritual strength to roll the rock away from that which threatens to entomb us and reemerge with hope and purpose into the full sunlight and freedom of our human being. Easter is all about our choosing life and being over death and religion, even in the face of the Good Friday itself. I've always been deeply moved by the description of the American essayist E.B. White of his wife many decades ago, his wife Catherine, as she was planting tulips and crocus bulbs in her garden in what proved to be the last autumn of her life, for she was seriously ill with cancer at the time. Here are his words, written as he watched from the kitchen window, his elderly wife busy about her life's work. There was something comical yet touching in her bedazzled appearance, the small, hunched-over figure, her studied absorption of the implausible notion that there would be yet another spring, oblivious to the ending of her own days, which she knew perfectly well was at hand. Sitting in the garden she had tended for so many years, where her detailed chart under those dark skies in dying October, calmly plotting their resurrection. To me, Easter is always a matter of the human heart. It is the decision to live fully and well in face of loss or danger. Two other older stories about cancer moved me too. You may remember the story of Elizabeth Edwards, wife of the then presidential candidate John Edwards, and Tony Snow, then the presidential press secretary, each of whom had to confront what can only be understood as terrible and sad Good Friday news in their lives. As you may remember, both Mrs. Edwards and Mr. Stone were told by their respective doctors that the cancers they had hoped were at least in remission had in fact returned and metastasized and threatened their lives and their futures. What touched me and many others, regardless of our political persuasion, was the obvious spiritual and emotional resolve both these individuals expressed. The spiritual and emotional resolve not to hold their tents or fold their tents, resent their fates, and give up their lives, but rather to continue to live their lives in the face of the new limitations, fully and well, with purpose, passion, and direction. Mrs. Edwards, a Democrat, despite her terminal illness, was steadfast in her resolve to be an active partner in her husband's principal campaign for the presidency. And Mr. Snowden, a Republican, despite his terminal illness, was similarly steadfast in his resolve to return to work in the White House on behalf of an administration and a nation he believed in. The human point here, the Easter point here, transcends all political ideologies and considerations. What is important is not the particulars of what these two very different individuals believed was a purpose and meaning of their lives. What was and still is important is that they quietly but bravely showed that it was possible for ordinary human beings to roll away the rock that threatened to entomb and diminish them. Roll it away as they chose to continue to live their lives as fully and as purposely and as vibrantly as they could. These words from my retired colleague Richard Gilbert come to mind. He wrote, "A tomb is no place to stay, be it a cave in the Judean hills or the dark cave of the Spirit. A tomb is not a place to stay when fresh grass rolls away the stone of winter cold, and valiant flowers burst their way through to warmth and light. A tomb is no place to stay when each morning announces our reprieve and we know that we are granted yet another day of living. A tomb is no place to stay when life laughs a welcome to hearts that have been away too long. When I got home after our service last Sunday, I made a Zoom call to my friend of 45 years, Janet, in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Like Elizabeth Edwards and Tony Snow, Janet is a cancer patient. She was told just before Christmas that the malignancy, which was surgically removed from her breast, had aggressively returned and was spreading throughout her body and will sooner than later take her life. No one, not Janet, not her family, not me or any of her other friends, not her doctors, expect miracles. She is gravely ill. Frankly, there is no good medical news to be had. The sadness of this Good Friday truth cannot and is not being avoided by anyone in Janet's circle of love and care. But my brave and spirited friend Janet is, even in the face of her own Good Friday, practicing resurrection. She is, in the face of this final and unwelcome challenge to her life, choosing to live as fully and finely as she can from a place of genuine love and purpose and connection with the people around her and those that she knows elsewhere, and also the world around her. We talked for a good 2 hours, and while we talked about the profound sadness of the cancer raging back into her life, it was also a conversation rich in love and humor and warmth. She was interested in what was happening in my life, the COVID pandemic, in the fate of the world, and she shared her thoughts and feelings with tenderness and care. Janet, bless her tenacious heart, is refusing to submit her personhood to her illness. Knowing that she had another chemo treatment this past Thursday, I called her on Friday, Good Friday, and she told me in a loud, clear voice, "Well, Jackie, today is a pretty good day. I don't feel sick, I don't need any painkillers, and I feel pretty strong. I'll take it." My friend continues to live with the same strength and purpose that have always been the hallmark of her kind and sure and generous personality. I am grateful beyond measure for being able to spend that time talking with her. It was rich, full, and good, and Janet reminded me of the importance of never giving up on life and love, and the possibilities for purpose which still are hers. Now, in other reflections, I have lifted up the important spiritual distinction between optimism and active hope. Let me share a story about this distinction from my colleague, Bruce Marshall. He wrote, "A friend whose wife is undergoing treatment for a serious illness told me that their physician advised them to approach this medical crisis with hope, not optimism." Now, he says that made sense to me. He continues, "Optimism, as I understand it, is an attitude of expectation that a particular favorable result will occur, that a person will recover from an illness, that we will achieve a specific goal, that the publisher's clearinghouse will pick my number from among the millions and billions submitted. He says the dictionary definition of optimism is an inclination to anticipate the best possible outcome. But optimism often leads to disappointment when the best possible outcome does not or cannot occur. Then we are let down and may feel betrayed. Hope, Bruce says, on the other hand, is more resilient, more enduring, more helpful. Hope is less specific. Hope is an attitude that looks for the possibility in whatever life deals us. Hope does not anticipate a particular outcome, but keeps before us the possibility that something useful might come from this. Hope advises us to look squarely at the realities that confront us while remaining aware of the possibilities. So ends the story that he gave. Good people, my Easter message to you this Easter Sunday morning is spoken gently because my heart is heavily weighted with the uncertainties of this pandemic. I want to talk now about the meaning of resurrection during this dark and dangerous COVID pandemic time with a resurrection idea of hope. As you know, today falls in a larger holy season. Passover is a season of freedom and a liberation movement. Easter celebrates new life in the midst of death and a sick society. Ramadan teaches us all about fasting and service and global interconnection. These faith traditions and their moral teachings have much to say in this moment about the need to come together to resurrect a new way of being in the world. Remember that when spring comes again, when there's resurrection, the spring is not what it was the year before. It's new leaves, new soil, new flowers. It's new. It's not what was before. So we want to build a new world, a new resurrection of a world different from the past world. Now, theologically, the liberal, progressive Christian resurrection story is a confirmation of the justice of God, that Jesus was indeed right to stand up for the poor and dispossessed. The stories we're hearing in the midst of this pandemic resonate with the story in the Bible about the crucifixion of Jesus, a brown-skinned homeless refugee and a convicted felon who was killed by the state for organizing a moral fusion movement to transform society to serve the needs of the poor rather than the rich. Those stories resonate with the story of resurrection that follows in this from Mark. In Mark's gospel, there are multiple resurrections. Before Jesus is raised up, Mark 27 tells us that right at the moment of Jesus' death, the tombs of holy ones and fallen fighters are raised to life. These resurrections take place in the midst of suffering and poverty and death. The resurrection of today must be responded to with us contributing with active hope of resurrection and bringing good news to the poor, comfort to the broken and brokenhearted in our world today, as Jesus did in his world. Let us believe the resurrection is vindication of the love and justice Jesus stood for as we fight for voting rights, living wages, universal health care, free quality education, immigrant rights, welfare rights, forgiveness of debt, and a complete moral agenda for our country now. In this religious season, may we see a rebirth of our commitment to save the soul of our democracy and our nation. The act of hope in the promise of Easter's resurrection is still with me. May it be within you too during these troubling times. For your personal lives, I pray that you may be aware of and grateful for the holy possibilities and richnesses of your life, no matter what challenges, losses, or sorrows you face. Treasure the holy gift of your personhood and know that you were created from the very center of your existential being for life and love, joy and purpose, no matter what diminishments may come your way. You are free to lean into your precious holy life, free to live fully and lovingly and well. No matter what losses or limitations you have had to endure, you are free yet to practice resurrection, to see the possibilities that still lie before you, and lean fully into the life that is yours. Because we are humans, with each morning sun, we can be reborn, resurrected in hope and love and possibility. Let us, as long as we have breath, every day be resurrected to fullness, to the fullness of being, of life and purpose. I suggest that in our individual lives and in the collective life of this nation, indeed the world, this is what Easter resurrection theme can mean for us as Unitarian Universalists. I encourage you to resurrect every day with the attitude of active hope that looks for possibility that something useful will come, whatever life bestows on you. Good people, may it be so for you. May you make it so. And now, I'm going to light a candle over here, a candle for all the people that I have and will be speaking about in the meditational prayer that I'll be offering. Please note this is the same meditational prayer I offered the last 3 weeks. It is just so beautiful. I can't say it any better. And now I invite you to close your eyes and find a comfortable meditational or prayer position. Put your hands on your heart or rest softly them on your knees. Center yourselves now for a meditational prayer. Source of life, within whom we live, move, breathe, and have our being. Loving God, Cosmos, Goddess, and all the other names we call upon the divine. Hear our meditational prayer of our hearts. Socially distanced in this pandemic, we feel alone, yet bombarded, overwhelmed, and yet isolated. Our hands crack with cleanliness, and our hearts break with loneliness and fear. This is new, and we don't know what to do, how to feel, how to survive, how to stay hopeful. Source of life, be with us in this time of unknowing. Slow our breath. Cease the churning in our guts. Embrace us, source of life, spirit of love, spirit of love with your love in the way we cannot embrace each other right now. Remind us that none of us knows how to do this right. Source of life, we beg you to protect the most vulnerable in our nation and the world right now. Protect the doctors, the nurses, the scientists, and all the healthcare workers at the front lines. Protect their families. Protect the checkout drivers, checkout clerks and cashiers, the delivery drivers and pharmacists, the truck drivers bringing in our food and other supplies. Protect the pharmacists. Protect all their families. Protect and heal those who are sick, struggling to breathe. Protect their family. Be with all those out of work or about to be. Be with the people alone, starving for connection and touch, waiting for hello in there. Be with the parents trying to smile bravely for their kids, even when their own hearts are aching. Thank you, Spirit of life, Source of life, God, Goddess, and all the other ways that you are named. Thank you for the gifts we took for granted or even scoffed at until now. Magical new inventions like the telephone, the internet, live streaming video, Netflix. Magical sounds like the spring peepers joyfully and defiantly refusing to practice any kind of social distancing at all. Life springs anew. So, Source of life, hear our prayers. They rise to you from all our separate homes, but we pray them as one together. Change our fear to faith. Change our anxiety to loving action, one step at a time, one day at a time. Source of life, be with us. May it be so. And now I invite you to relax back and listen to the special song, Comfort Me.
Comfort me, oh my soul.
we listen to Yo-Yo Ma playing Mozart's Donna Nobis Pacem, please remember you can donate via the Give button on our church website in the upper right-hand side, or send in a donation directly to our office, 555 E as in Elephant Street. To be part of your pledge, note it in the donation box. Otherwise, your donation will be given to the Community Food Bank. We gratefully receive any offering you have given. This is a special time for our congregation where each of us has an opportunity to share major events in our lives, joys, concerns, and sorrows, so we can be supported by our UU community. As Reverend Jackie reads the emailed sorrows, concerns, and joys, I will light a candle. If you have a sorrow, concern, or joy that you did not email to us, you can post it now in the chat box. First, please designate if it is a sorrow, a concern, or a joy. After the emails are read, then those in the chat box will be shared, and I will light a candle for you.
Victoria McDonald shares this sorrow. She says, as a young collegiate, I enrolled in an American Indian history class where I learned about the numerous epidemics endured by native tribes. European Americans carried smallpox, tuberculosis, and diphtheria, which decimated tribes, or they purposely gave them germ-laden blankets and moved many tribes from their homelands to unfamiliar environments. Moving into this pandemic, I honor the suffering they endured, because now all tribes, states, and counties or countries are having to deal with an invisible foe. Joys. Victoria McDonald shares this joy that comes from the sorrow that I just shared. She says, Although tribes suffered greatly from the challenges brought by European Americans, most tribes survived and were thriving. Once again, they are speaking their languages, reawakening links to creatures, creating incredible works of art, and holding their heads high as they reclaim their clans, tribes, and family ties. They will recover, as we will, and we find new pathways. David Bogart shares this joy. She says, although I have chosen to only check in periodically on our pandemic situation, my heart goes out to so many afflicted by every single one death. I find my joy each day in finding gratitude that I am retired, that I've been able to trail ride and love my animals and work on my yard and read and write and paint. And I actually feel more connected with friends than I ever did before. Spring is beautiful, and I choose that beauty. Other joys in the chat? Okay.
Yeah, we have a joy from Katrin Lepler. One of our joys was born 3 years ago today. Happy birthday, Vitus. That's my joy too.
And we have another joy from the chat. This is from Lisa Christensen. Feeling joy and relieved that my nephew Andrew has returned safely from active duty in Afghanistan and is now under a 14-day quarantine in El Paso. So far, he shows no signs of illness.
I will light one more candle for all those sorrows, concerns, and joys we hold in our hearts and are not ready to share at this time. No, we extend our love for you. We are all in this together. Our closing hymn is number 344, A Promise Through the Ages. You've been sent the music, and Jessica will play through once and then sing.
Something always, always sings.
My closing words are what I read last week. Again, I think I couldn't say it better. They are the words from Laura Kelly Fanducci, her poem, When This Is Over. And as you heard me say before, it's on social media everywhere because it seems to uplift anyone affected or infected by the COVID-19 virus. She writes, when this is over, may we never again take for granted a handshake with a stranger, full shelves at the store, conversations with neighbors, a crowded theater, Friday night out, the taste of communion, a routine checkup, the school rush each morning, coffee with a friend, the stadium roaring, each deep breath, a boring Tuesday, life itself. When this ends, may we find that we have become more like the people we wanted to be, that we were called to be, we hope to be, and may we stay that way, better for each other because of the worst. May it be so.